so excited to be joined by my friend Charles Lee. Yes. who apparently has a very devoted fan club. Yes, this is so great. Charles is kind of going to be a recurring presenter in the big rooms this weekend, which is so great. And he's also the author of a fantastic book, Good Idea, Now What? And that's kind of where I want to start the conversation with you. Tell us a little bit of your personal journey of why you wrote the book and then kind of what led up to writing it.
Great. Well, I actually studied philosophy in grad school. And from there, did things like ministry and not-for-profit work and working with a couple of different companies. And I realized just kind of over time that there was a common theme is that there were a lot of inspired people who had great passion, great intentions, but needed a little bit of a skill set in actually implementing well. So that kind of led me to do what I'm doing right now.
And so you can say that you enjoy the implementation process.
Yeah, I actually love it. It's kind of one of those things when, probably some of your core competencies are probably in your blind spots because they're so natural to you and you just figure everybody else does it well. But in reality, I think that's where, you really discover your gift, and that is, hey, I realize very few people do it well, and then it's kind of turned into a career that way.
And you have a little bit of background in youth ministry.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I was a youth director, youth pastor for about 12 years.
So great.
Yep.
And so you kind of get this DNA here, the fabric of being a youth worker.
Yeah, I used to bring youth workers to YS all the time.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so as youth workers, in general, anybody, we have ideas. And so they come maybe at different times of day, but we have an idea. And sometimes they'll stick with us, or sometimes we'll think about what we should do with it, but that's as far as it gets. Why is that happening?
I think part of it is like the biggest obstacle to implementing a concept is actually us. And the basic reality is that you may have a great idea, but like I mentioned in the big room is that this part of our brain literally kicks in. And there's a great book, if some of you guys want to read a good book on ideas, is Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. I mean, the art of war. Yeah. No, the war of art. The war of art, where he talks about the creative resistance we all face. And it's this part of our brain that kicks into, it's like a self-preservation, kind of this defense mechanism. And it prevents us from actually moving forward. And the reality is, like, a lot of the things we struggle with in launching a concept become moot once you launch it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of fear involved, right?
Yeah.
So you have an idea, maybe if it's in the context of youth ministry setting, and my senior pastor's going to hate this idea, or he'll shoot it down, or there's no way this will ever get approved, and so we just kind of let the idea fizzle out.
Right.
So that's part of the resistance. Is that right?
Yeah. So pretty much, it's all of these like illogical reasons. Because, I mean, if you think about people who have really made change in our world, I don't know of any of them that really defaulted to compliance or defaulted to, hey, I'm always going to do what they tell me to do. And it's kind of funny, and, it's part insecurity, and those things are always going to be there. But it's kind of like, so what? I mean, what kind of life ultimately do you want to end up living?
That's great. So there's barriers to these ideas, right? And so some of them are involved with our emotions that we experience, the resistance involved. What are some things that you found personally helpful in overcoming these barriers?
Yeah, I think one of the elements maybe I can share about this is your life rhythm. There are portions of the day that we're probably optimal in, and we can't always control every single day of the week, our schedules, but on the days where you have control, you have to guard your most creative, productive periods of the day and guard it with your entire life. So for me, I'm generally a morning person, and I think all of my creativity fits in between the hours of 5 a.m. and 12 p.m. So generally speaking, I try not to answer emails. I try not to do like project update meetings and things like that, is because if I don't take care of those hours, there's very little chance that we'll get anything substantial done the rest of the day. So it's really kind of finding your own rhythm. And there are seasons, when there are seasons when my kids were really young, so the schedule kind of goes out the window. It's okay. I'm just talking about those times where you could actually control it. to a certain level, take advantage of it and do your best work in those hours. Don't get distracted by everything from social media and you know, unnecessary phone calls and things like that, and just guard it. Even if it's like 2 hours a day, it's amazing how productive you can be if you spend 2 hours working on what you do best.
Yeah, and it's important to know that everybody's rhythm's a little bit different, because I'm not a morning person. Someone said, you know, they said something similar a couple years back, and so I tried the whole waking up early thing. Didn't work for me. But I'm a late night guy, and so same thing, kind of finding who you are, finding what works best for you, but making sure that you're protecting the creativity, kind of drawing a circle around and say, these are the moments I really need to capitalize on.
Yep.
That's so great. Yep. To the youth worker who's been doing youth ministry for 5 days,
that's
right?
Awesome.
They're here.
Yeah.
What better place to come to, right, and getting started?
Yeah.
But if you were to kind of pass along some wisdom or some thoughts, some encouragement, what would you share?
I think I would ultimately say lead from who you really are. And that's really a hard thing to kind of grasp and put your mind around. But if you're there for 5 days, I'm saying, like, okay, there's certain wisdom in looking towards your past. Yeah. But the reality is you ultimately have to be faithful to whatever God's called you to be. So, I mean, there are some other creative books like Ignore Everybody. And it's just the basic notion that, look, at the end of the day, you want to do what you do best. You're not like the former youth pastor. Yeah. You're not like who's gone before. You're not Duck Fields or Duffy Robbins or Tony Campolo. You're not. You're you. Yeah. And then I think part of it is to be open and intellectually honest enough to say, I don't have all the answers, and I'm going to be open to being shaped by people around me. And as we do, you know, the good news is, you know, you won't have all the right questions or the answers before you start, because the questions you have before you launch an idea are far different from the ones you ask while you're implementing. So for that, I would say just get started. It looks like he's or she's gotten started, and it's like you'll figure it out. I mean, if God has you in that place, there's so many great resources nowadays.
I love that. Identity is so important when you lead, knowing who you are and who you aren't. Really appreciate it. I want to point people to your website because there's a couple great resources there. I know you got the blog, but there's even these new podcasts where you're doing some interviews and kind of sharing idea implementation tips for others. So why don't you provide your website for everybody?
Yeah, it's just Charles, the letter T, Lee.com, and there's like blog posts, podcasts with thought leaders from different industries, and so there's a whole lot going on there.
And if you haven't already, make sure you check out the book, Good Idea, Now What? Thank you so much for stopping by, Charles. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Seth.